Good Monday morning. This is Micah Mitchell with Madison County Weather Updates, bringing you a true view exterior severe outlook. We'll mostly touch on today, but there is a severe chance, according to SPC, the next 3 days, actually probably about every day this week, there will be at least somewhat of a severe chance. But we'll focus mostly on today and then some tomorrow. First thing we're looking at is radar this morning, this storm cluster that's pushing through central Illinois right now, kind of pushing into eastern Illinois. And right now it's pretty vigorous. There are no warnings on it, but it is a pretty strong line of storms, pretty gusty, some localized heavy rain. The question is, given the time of day that it might come through, will this line hold together or will it fall apart? The model data kind of differs on that. The HRRR model, the high resolution rapid refresh model, it has it holding together a little better. The NAM3K has it falling apart. So in general, I would favor them falling apart, but this is the kind of setup that's highly unpredictable. You never know where these things are going to find these little pieces of energy to tap into, so we'll just have to watch it as it comes across. But this will be the first thing that we'll watch, and then we'll begin to watch the afternoon. However, let me show you the problem with using the models. Here's the HRRR, and you can see that it somewhat, this is the 6Z. There's a HRRR runs a new run every hour. So it's actually better to use, in the short term, just because you're going to get new data every hour. But this was the 6Z, just so we're comparing apples to apples here. And you can see that it had somewhat had the storm cluster out in Illinois, and then it began to break it up as it came across, by late morning or early afternoon. But it's still, even though it kind of had the cluster here, it's doing much better than what the NAM3K was, but it wasn't as vigorous and as widespread as what's actually occurring. Here's a look at how the NAM3K handled that. It somewhat had it, but it had it laid out a little more west to east, and then it really disintegrated it, pretty fast. I mean, there's current, and you can see that it's way off of where the line actually is. The line is more southwest to northeast. It's a lot more vertical than what the NAM3K had, which is probably why the NAM wants to break that up. So that's just an illustration of why I don't really use the models very much. So just know we're going to watch this first storm cluster come across this morning. We'll see how well it manages to hold together, because that will affect what happens later in the day. If it does fall apart, we'll start to watch where it fell apart, and then we'll watch those areas in the afternoon for redevelopment. And then before I get into the SPC, again, we'll see what this morning's line does, if it falls apart, where it falls apart, because that'll affect what occurs afterward. So all we can do is wait and see. Then we'll watch for the possibility of more severe storms popping up in more of an isolated fashion in the afternoon, evening, and then into the overnight tonight. And we'll just have to see how these things play out. But here's the Storm Prediction Center's outlook. They have added a slight risk of severe roughly south of I-74. So Indianapolis south and southwestern Indiana, kind of south of Indianapolis, I should say. We're in a marginal risk of severe up here. There is a minor tornado threat. Those do not look to be strong tornadoes, but of course even a weak tornado can be a problem. Here's that outlook. It's pretty much across the state a 2 to 4% chance. Here's the damaging wind outlook. That, again, the SPC is favoring farther to the southwest. That all depends on what direction these lines lay out. If they're more vertical like this morning's line, then that'll come farther northeast. If it's more west to east, like what some of the data is indicating, then the threat will be to the southwest, as the SPC has. And then there's very little hail threat up here, and to my eye, even in southwestern Indiana, that hail threat's pretty minor. Then as we get into tomorrow, The entire state is in a marginal risk for severe, with a slight risk out in the western Illinois and northwestern Illinois. I will say, though, that depending on what occurs today, I would not be surprised to see this, kind of get extended, into basically the areas that it kind of is today, maybe a little farther to the northeast. So we'll keep that in mind. We'll see how that plays out tomorrow. And then there's very little tornado risk, but again, if that risk gets shifted to the southeast, the tornado threat would also come southeast. But again, the tornado threat is minor, and they do not look to be strong tornadoes. The main threat will be damaging winds. And then as we get into Wednesday, then there's a marginal risk of severe. And again, Wednesday's coverage looks a lot less. The main coverage on Wednesday will probably occur in the pre-dawn hours, with a cluster that could come in Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. So I'll keep an eye on these things as they develop. I'll keep an eye on today. As it develops, I'll update you as needed. Again, the main thing we're going to watch first is what happens with this cluster that's coming out of Illinois, whether it actually holds together or whether it falls apart. Again, if it falls apart, wherever it falls apart, it'll leave a boundary, and then we'll watch that area for new development this afternoon. So this is Micah Mitchell with Madison County Weather Updates. Have a great day and stay weather aware.